Hey there, in this week's episode, we're off to Rome where we're going to explore arguably one of the most famous churches in the world, the Basilica di San Pietro, better known as St. Peter's Basilica. So let's get started. The first thing you'll notice when you enter St. Peter's Square is that you are underneath the dome, and it's actually the largest dome ever built, measuring 136 feet at the base and 217 feet at the top. It towers over the square and the city of Rome, serving as a reminder of God's presence as well as the power of the papacy. As you walk into the plaza, you'll pass by two large Egyptian obelisks, one which dates back to the reign of Caligula. The obelisks were later erected in the Middle Ages by Pope S. Borgia and are now symbols of the temporal power of the church. There are also two fountains flanking the main entrance of the basilica, which were designed by Bernini in the late Baroque style. These fountains represent the four rivers of paradise, symbolizing the power of the papacy over all of creation. The basilica itself is the second largest church in the world, after St. Paul's in London. It is also considered to be the most important church in Christianity, because it is the burial place of St. Peter, who was one of Jesus' 12 apostles. The current basilica was built between 1506 and 1626 during the Renaissance and Baroque periods, and it replaced an earlier church which stood on the same spot since the 4th century. The design of the basilica is a combination of several different architectural styles, including Romanesque, Renaissance, and Baroque. The interior of the basilica is truly magnificent, and it contains some of the finest works of art in the world. Some of the highlights include Michelangelo's Pietà, which is a sculpture depicting Mary holding the dead body of Jesus Christ after he was crucified. It's located near the main altar, and it's one of Michelangelo's most famous works. Another highlight is the bronze baldacchino, which was designed by Bernini, and it's located above the high altar. The baldacchino is a large canopy-like structure that was intended to symbolize the Holy Trinity. The columns that support the baldacchino are made of bronze, and they were taken from four ancient Egyptian obelisks that were in the Circus of Gaius and Nero. Another impressive feature of the basilica is the floor, which is made up of over 2,000 marble inlays that depict scenes from the Old and New Testaments, as well as the life of St. Peter. The basilica also houses the tombs of many popes and other important figures in church history. One of the most notable tombs belongs to St. Peter himself, and it's located below the high altar. The tomb is a large bronze structure that was designed by Bernini, and it's surrounded by a number of other tombs and monuments to popes and saints. In addition to the art and architecture, the basilica is also home to a number of artifacts that are of great religious significance. For example, the basilica contains one of the nails that was allegedly used to crucify Jesus Christ. Another artifact is the feccione, which is a piece of wood that is said to have come from the boat in which Jesus Christ walked on water. So if you want to visit this amazing basilica, keep in mind that it is free to enter, but there are often long lines. If you want to avoid the crowds, it's best to visit early in the morning or late at night. You'll also need to dress modestly, as the basilica is a house of worship inside the basilica, so you'll have to take in the beauty of the art and architecture with your own eyes. Now let's go back to the Vatican. Just across the street from the basilica is the Vatican Museums, which are a collection of 5 museums that contain a number of important works of art. The museum's collection includes over 20,000 pieces, and it is considered to be one of the most comprehensive collections of art in the world. Some of the highlights include Raphael's rooms, which are 4 rooms decorated with frescoes that depict scenes from the life of Christ and the founding of the Catholic Church. Another highlight is the Sistine Chapel, which contains Michelangelo's famous frescoes on the ceiling, as well as the Last Judgment on the altar wall. The museums also contain a number of other artifacts and works of art, including sculptures, paintings, tapestries, and other decorative arts. Of the various buildings located in Vatican City, none is more iconic than the Papal Palace. Better known as the Apostolic Palace, it is the official residence of the Pope, and it is one of the largest palaces in the world. Construction began in 1377 and continued for several centuries. The palace consists of a number of different wings and courtyards, including the stunning courtyard of Sixtus V, which was designed by Raphael. The palace contains a number of important rooms, including the throne room, which is used for official ceremonies, and the library, which contains over 80,000 books and manuscripts. The palace is also home to a number of other important offices and departments of the Vatican, including the Secretariat of State, which is the Pope's executive office. As mentioned before, the Sistine Chapel is one of the most famous rooms in the palace, and it contains some of the most important works of art in the world. The chapel was completed in the 16th century, and it was originally used for papal elections. However, it is now used for special ceremonies and events. The chapel contains 3 famous frescoes painted by Michelangelo between 1508 and 1512. The first is The Creation of Adam, which depicts the moment when God gives life to Adam. The second is The Last Judgment, which depicts the return of Christ and the final judgment of humanity. These frescoes are considered to be some of the greatest works of Renaissance art, and they have had a profound influence on Western culture. Speaking of Michelangelo, another interesting fact about the chapel is that it was actually supposed to be painted by Raphael. However, Raphael died before he could start the project, and Michelangelo was asked to complete it instead. Michelangelo was not a painter, and he had never painted a fresco before, but he was up for the challenge, and his work on the Sistine Chapel is now considered to be one of his greatest masterpieces. Finally, no tour of the Vatican would be complete without a visit to St. Peter's Square. The square was designed by Bernini in the 17th century, and it surrounds the basilica on 3 sides. The square is also flanked by 2 colonnades that symbolize the arms of the church reaching out to the world. St. Peter's Square is the center of many important events in the Catholic Church, including papal audiences, processions, and ceremonies such as the canonization of saints. The square is also a popular tourist destination, and it is one of the most photographed places in the world. Well, that's all we have time for today. But don't worry. Next week, we'll continue our tour of Vatican City and explore some of the other important sites, such as the Vatican Gardens and the necropolis beneath St. Peter's Basilica. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.